the correct sequence in the downswing with your driver is vital, not only for power development, but to really help the consistency of strike as well. Make sure you check out this video. Well, it was a very straight one, so the distance is going to come up for me. Not my longest, but not a bad jump off point. Today we're going to be discussing hitting the driver longer. And actually, I've had a couple of questions of recent to some of my videos about how to start the downswing correctly. And the questions have tended to be, should it be a bump or a slide first or a rotate? How do I start my downswing? We should really be starting with some lateral movement towards our lead side. So our pelvis does need to move forwards. Now, more so with a driver than an iron, but even with an iron, we do need our hips going towards the target. And that should almost be the first movement. There should be a downward pressure into our lead shoe. Our hips are starting to move forwards and then they're rotating. And it's not quite that simple. It's not like shift and rotate. Obviously, as we are shifting our pressure, we are already starting to rotate. But if you were going to put it in an order, you'd say there was a shift before the rotation. So if you start your downswing correctly with that lower body moving towards the target, that pressure going into that lead side, but you manage to keep your head back and your upper body closed for a little bit longer, you will create an almighty stretch down here in your lead side, the left side of my body. And that's a huge, huge power source. That's that coiling effect that we really want to create, not in the backswing, but actually in that downswing move. Now, our pelvis with a driver needs to end up in an ideal world ahead of where it started by about 4 to 6 inches. So our hips do need to be going this way. I often, on my V1 software, will draw some lines up the side of my leg. And I'll draw a line here up the side of my lead leg. And by the time I get into impact, I would like that line that was on the outside edge of the leg to actually now be the middle of the thigh. So that's quite a good checkpoint if you're looking on video. The line that's starting on the outside of the thigh would now be through the middle of the leg. Okay, so your hips are moving forwards laterally towards the target. But the real key move with the driver is to be moving the hips forwards, but keep the head back. What we don't want to start to see is everything moving forwards towards the target. And this is the little difference iron to driver. We still want separation with an iron for sure, but we'd like our head pretty much centered over the golf ball. Whereas with a driver, we tend to see a lot of elite golfers, their head will actually move away from the targets. The hips are going towards the target and the head is moving away from the targets. There's a real separation. Now, a lot of that is because the ball's up on the tee and we're trying to strike up on it, maximize our launch conditions, our angle of attack and our distance. So I've got a couple of drills for you. One that I think is going to work incredibly well at home. And the other one, something you could do either in the garden or on the driving range to get those feels. So we're going to jump into the exercises first, starting with the at-home one. So as an at-home drill, what I want you to use is a wall, quite simply. I want you to stand, so you're around 18 inches, 1.5 foot from the wall, but play around with it. You're going to make a backswing and I want you to try and get both palms touching the wall. So I've got my palms touching the wall here, and what I'm trying to do is actually keep my palms there, but at the start of what would be the downswing, get the feeling of applying some pressure towards my lead foot and getting my hips moving a little bit laterally towards the target. That way. Now, I'm actually going to multitask here, so I'm not only going to move my hips forwards, but I'm going to start to then rotate them. So it's moving forwards, applying some pressure to that lead foot, and rotating. And now I'm really creating some separation between what my upper body is doing and my lower body. And that's what we're trying to get in the downswing. That's something we see with all elite golfers, is they create that big separation gap. They're almost keeping their arms up as they're rotating their hips. I recently did a video and I mentioned a couple of numbers with Rory. So I will put a link here that I think is well worth checking out. Click on it, it's very relevant to what we're discussing today. But Rory, by the time his hips are back to zero, okay, back to where they were effectively in terms of open close, back to zero on the downswing, his torso is still 40 degrees closed. So he's actually really creating this separation between upper half and lower half. That wall exercise is great for feeling that. Try and keep the palms on the wall, rotate the lower body forwards. So the exercise then I would do more driving range. We just need a couple of alignment sticks. Now, if you're off the grass, you're going to be able to shove a tall stick into the ground. If you're on a driving range, you're either going to need something like this, a swing plate, or just maybe a range bucket you could put the tall stick through. So that's going to go just outside my left hip for me, so my lead hip. And I'm going to use another tall stick, which is going to represent where my head is. I'm going to make sure that my head stays behind this stick, but I'm going to be trying to bump this stick, okay? So I'm leaving about 1 inch or so gap from my lead hip to the stick. We're going to get to the top, and I'm going to be trying to get my lead hip to hit this alignment. But I want you to feel like you keep your head, and this is especially with the driver, behind the stick I've put pretty much in the middle of my feet, under where my head started, or under my nose line. So I'm keeping my head on or behind that line, but again, in my hips moving forwards. So again, we're creating big separation. Now, what I did really on that one is not only bumped, but I started to also rotate there. Might not be my longest, but big high draw. I'm sure I'll get a real positive angle of attack. Maybe even more of an in to out path, hence that draw shape, but really got the sensation of trying to drive my lead hip into this while keeping my head back at setup. So I definitely do some exercises set up this way. I definitely do that at home exercise and try and create that separation between upper half and lower half in the downswing. Just make some practice swings where you try and separate the upper half and the lower half a little bit more. I hit up on that ball by 4.6 degrees, into out by about ½ degree. Pretty good going. It wasn't my quickest. You can feel perhaps a little bit restrictive there, but I'm going to try and get those same sensations. That one was more left, but I'm sure quicker. It was long, but it wasn't my best direction. Got ball speed up to 150 there. Club head speed to 105. So started to generate a little bit more speed, just not great direction. Let's see if I can hit a straighter one. That's my fairway finder, and good. I'm definitely finishing there. A longer one for me. I'm interested to see the numbers on that one, but I actually snuck that one out there to 291. Which is definitely long for me. Flew at 268. That was my longest one for a little while, and one of my straightest. Just a little bit more committed, really tight dispersion on that one. Very, very happy with it. Up to 107 miles an hour. I will take that 100%. Give it a go. Really start at home. Do the wall exercise. Then jump in the garden or on the range and with the tour sticks. Just try and get that feeling of, yes, starting with the lower body first, but with the driver being aware that we do need to keep the upper body back as that happens, creating that separation between the upper half and the lower half. If that video has helped, hit the thumbs up, share it with as many golfers as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Right now, YouTube is suggesting the next video of mine that's relevant for you. It's just here, so click on it and check it out.